this is the first presentation. Vote buying is a good sign. And this is collaborative work again. Caroline von Ham, myself, and it's not on here, but should be on here, Michael Poppich. Why do these? Anyway, so the idea here is basically, okay, so we have elections, democratic elections, they're supposed to create accountability. Holding leaders responsible, throwing the rascals out if need be, right? That's sort of the bottom line. If you manipulate the elections, then you don't have not only no democracy, but also no accountability. So we've been thinking about this, that rulers and also opposition can choose different strategies, different tactics, if you like, to manipulate elections. At that, there should be some sequence involved here, depending on different tactics being costly, more or less costly in different contexts. So the idea is basically, if you're a ruler of Equatorial Guinea, you don't need to engage in much of sort of physical violence, maybe throw a couple of people in jail, but that's it. And you definitely don't need to buy any votes, right? Because all you need to do is walk into the electoral management body and say, here are the results, I won the 98.75%, okay? Don't bother counting the votes. So that's sort of, in that context, a cheap and an efficient way to manipulate the elections. But in a more contested situation, especially if you have more of sort of free media, there are different actors who can reveal what you're doing and will also publicize, maybe also internationally, if you use a lot of violence and intimidation. So at some point, you need to actually find another tactic to win the election, vote buying, right? So you can no longer intimidate people, or maybe not enough people to stay away from the polls or voting for you, and you can no longer sort of, without potential high risk or high cost in terms of legitimacy, try to manipulate the electoral management body. So you manipulate voters by buying their votes. So there should be sort of vote buying should increase when countries democratize. And then only at very high levels of democracy, when parties perhaps turn to more programmatic and it's fair elections and all that, then it becomes costly to buy votes. You can be exposed and then thereby lose power instead. So you should see a decline eventually. All right, so we looked at this in Africa in the first phase here. For the period, basically third wave in Africa, 86 to 2012, time series cross-sectional with fixed effects, lots of controls. So yes, that reminded me, I was asked during the break to say something about this, the correlation and causation. There are different views on this. I think one general view at least is, so many of the presentations you see here with time series cross-sectional, fixed effects, random effects, other strategies, basically try to use separation in time within countries over time. If one thing changes before another thing changes and it systematically goes on that way, there is a more of a belief that X is significantly related to Y. The causation, the causal attribution, John was sort of speaking about this a little bit, is always a difficult thing. I sometimes say, well, it's always a theoretical construct, right? You need to have a good theory about why X should affect Y. We don't see the actual causal theory. If you want to be a little bit rude about it, it's the same with gravity, right? Nobody has seen the law of gravity. We've seen things dropping down all the time if we let them go. That's consistent with the theory, the law of gravity. So it's been proven over and over again, it's corroborated over and over again. But the theory itself is a theoretical construct, and we just sort of have the same thing. So that's maybe a sort of a very brief on the correlation causation kind of thing. Okay, so here are the quick results. Basically what we're seeing here, so this is the scale over which vote buying, governmental intimidation, electoral administration manipulation varies. So you have high levels up here and you have lower levels down here, and then you have sort of, we use in this graph, it's freedom, house, civil liberties, so it's separate from elections, but it doesn't matter, we can use all kinds of things here. We want to use something in this graph that's not V-Dem, so that it's not sort of us measuring the same thing here. And so you see this as vote buying is significantly increasing as countries become sort of electoral authoritarian, if you like. And then it starts going down again. In this sample, we have very few observations here in the higher end of the Freedom House scale. This is reverse, so 7 is the good part of the good countries. And while government intimidation, electoral administration manipulation go down as we predicted. So this is basically why vote buying is a good sign. It's, of course, maybe a bad thing in itself, and may have bad consequences. But when we see countries, increased vote buying in countries, it's probably a good sign that they are becoming more democratic. Focus on government and intimidation and electoral management body strengthening seems to be a good idea overall in more autocratic context. And if vote buying goes up, be happy at least for a short period of time. So that's, of course, put in stark and sort of popularized terms, but you get the drift from the graph. Okay, so thank you very much.